So we're in this moment where we're participating in a large community that's divided. And it's a moment to think about what makes us a community and what makes community. And I think if we start and recognize that the community that we all share and that any smaller community needs to acknowledge is the human community. So any community that we participate in that whose values or objectives or way of operating is not consistent with those of the human community is actually not functioning properly. It's not taking a place that can allow it to coexist within the world of communities that it participates in. So to make that a little bit maybe less abstract, any way that we have of identifying ourselves in which the other in some way becomes less human is a problem. And when we look at a lot of political discourse, when we look at a lot of social discourse, the way that we are positioning ourselves with respect to whatever those that we consider our other does tend to have this dehumanizing effect. And when you feel yourself to be dehumanized by the other and you wish to maintain your humanity or rehumanize yourself, that can be very difficult to do. So I'd like to just kind of put a little reset and come back to what it is really that we all share. And as it's said again and again in Buddhist texts, what we all share is a wish to be happy and to avoid suffering. This is a primal impulse that animates life, and especially sentient life. That we are trying to avoid what's painful and find some state of peace, of contentment, of joy, of happiness. And the fact that we need to put all these alternative names is an indication that it might not be that clear exactly what we mean by happiness and what it is that we understand by happiness, and yet we're seeking it. So already we can see there's a little bit of a problem there. And at the same time, we are trying to avoid whatever we find to be painful. And there, what's painful for us, I think we probably have less difficulty saying this is painful. Identifying what, simply identifying that is painful. We might not be able to articulate what it is that makes it painful, why it's painful, where the pain comes from, but we know I don't want this. And we're seeking to move away from it. We just don't always have that clear an understanding of what it is that we want to be moving towards. And so this is an important term of reference to start with, that we are all in this search to get out from painful states and this vaguely defined wish to find some state that's not that without being able to define it very clearly. So that is a shared ground that we all stand on. And it's important to note that not only do we all share this wish to be happy and not to suffer, I think for the most part we all share some fundamental confusion about what it is that would make us happy and what it is that's causing our unhappiness. So we share this confusion as to what makes us happy and what is causing our suffering. And that's pretty important because all of us are trying to figure it out all the time because this is such a fundamental drive that we have to escape suffering. And we're using all of our intellectual capacity, all of our discernment, all of our intelligence to figure out who or what it is that's causing us problems. And within a context where it's not that clear what's causing the problems, and where our ability to really figure out what cause is connected to which effect in terms of our well-being, we are very prone to being told by others what it is that would make us happy. That's why we have a consumer society. We are able to be swayed into using our resources to acquire things that we didn't even know existed last week because we are susceptible to being told what would make us happy. And that happens in politics also. Politics, in a certain sense, is the presentation of what would be best for you. And so that's just when we're talking to people or listening to views that we can't imagine how any self-respecting individual could stand up in public and say that. We should just know that we're in this territory where we're kind of groping, and we're also being manipulated as we grope. We're being swayed and manipulated. And at the same time, we have all shared the experience of growing up as defenseless, helpless infants. So when we emerge, we are completely unable to do anything for ourselves. And we have this experience very early on that the world offers itself to us and it meets all of our needs spontaneously. We need warmth, we need touch, we need contact, we need milk. And we just make some noise and it arrives. And while our needs are extremely simple, our early experience is of perfect interdependence. That interdependence yields exactly what we need and takes care of us. Yet, we're being cared for by human caretakers, and they get tired, they get distracted, they have their own much more complicated adult thoughts and needs and circumstances. And we start having this experience at a certain point that it fails us. We're abandoned. We're left helpless. Our needs are not met. And, as we become more sophisticated, from the infant stage, we start trying to figure that out. What is happening? Why is that? What have I done wrong? What's failed here? And we do have, as we're entering into this non-interdependent way of perceiving ourselves, where we are here and the other is there, and why isn't the other taking care of me, and why isn't mommy or daddy or grandma or whoever giving me what I need, and we get frustrated and we get confused and we get angry. We have, with that perception of two, we have the choice, I'm the problem or they're the problem. And there are points where we would feel so profoundly vulnerable if we came to the conclusion that this other who's all powerful in my world is flawed, is bad. And so we tend to understand that there's a problem with us. There's something that we're doing wrong. And so this is how we all grow up. All of us. Having our vulnerability be understood to be a problem and something uncomfortable or something dangerous for us to experience. And we go forth into the world and we find more and more complicated social situations, and we end up with this world that we have, with this society that we have, where we're afraid of others, We feel inadequate. We're unhappy about feeling inadequate. We lash out because we feel inadequate. We perceive the other to be more powerful. And at a certain point, and it's usually in the adolescence when we start rebelling against our parents, we decide, no, they're the problem. And all adolescents understand that their parents are the real problem, right? Even if there's this residual secret sense that actually, no, it's really me, but I'm going to blame them. And so we all grow up like this, and we all move forth into the world groping for some kind of security, figuring out our way, stumbling and fumbling and suffering. And some of us will, have one way of seeing what would be a good solution. Sometimes we make our own refuges, right? And sometimes we make a refuge in our own righteousness. Sometimes we make our relationships our refuge, and then we might just end up adopting whatever view our social contexts have adopted. And, so when we're talking with people who take positions that are different from ours, it's really helpful to have this perspective of our not just shared humanity, because that sounds nice, but it also sounds a little abstract, but to really know we all experience ourselves as broken, as lacking, as vulnerable. We're all experiencing that, including and maybe especially the people who seem the most aggressive and assertive, and imposing. That comes out of a place of neediness, and that we have this constant yearning that we haven't figured out really how to address. And we're doing the best we can with all the different strategies that we have. And we're seeing a lot of broken strategies being applied by people who are just fragile and flawed. And so are we. And so, when we look at the situation of divisiveness and of all of these difficult things, it can just be useful to kind of touch back and recognize, okay, these are all different manifestations of a shared ground. And then when we speak with others or when we think of others, we can speak with them or think of them with our feet really firmly planted in that ground that we share.